Over the next several videos, I want to examine the similarities between the liquid ink brush technology and the dynamic speckles brush technology. The reason why is because under the hood, both of these brush technologies do a very similar and unique thing within the Painter brush engine. And this is going to help you to understand both of them much better. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to come up here to Window, and I want to come down here to Brush Control Panels and come over here to General. This is going to open up the General Brush Control Panel and all of the rest of the brush control panels as long as they're connected, and all of yours should be so that you can follow along with the next several videos. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin with the Flat Color 2 brush, which is in the Pens and Pencils brush category of the Painter 2016 brushes library. I'm also using a color of black, and this is the way that my brush is going to look if I make a stroke. The important thing to understand about this particular brush is that it's using a dab type of computed circular. And the idea of computed circular is that it's one of several standard dab types. Now, all of the standard dab types are going to be very impacted by this concept of spacing. And the reason why is because what a standard dab type is going to do is it's going to stamp down an image over and over again, and that image is going to then conform to create a stroke like what you can see here. We can see this if we come over here to spacing, so I'm going to go ahead and click that to open that. And what you can see is that right now, what we got on this stroke was a spacing of 9%. But if I increase that spacing all the way up to 200% and I make a similar stroke, you can actually see the circular dabs that are making up this mark. And the idea here is that the only difference between this line and this line is the spacing between these circles. Otherwise, it's the exact same thing. Now, if you come up here to dab type and you click on this and you come all the way to the top, you can see that we have circular, computed circular, single pixel, static bristle, and captured, which are all going to be standard dab types. And they all work in the exact same way. We're basically going to be stamping down that image over and over again, and spacing is going to be very important to all of these. And the idea of spacing is going to be something that's only important when you're dealing with these standard dab types. If I come over here to my brush selector, and I come all the way to the top, and I choose the acrylics and gouache category, and I choose the real long bristle brush variant, and I go ahead and make a mark and Control A and backspace to clear this canvas, and then make a longer mark so that you can actually see what this brush is going to do. What you can see is that we're getting a completely different result. And it's important to note that the spacing sliders here are grayed out. And the reason why is because this is a rendered dab type. The idea of the way that the camel hair works is that each of these lines that you see is a static single pixel that is ultimately going to never change its size, and it's never going to have any kind of spacing issues because it's one continuous rendered line. And this is something that's also very useful in its own way because we can access the real bristle technology, which is right here. So if I come over here and I click on that, you can see that this is using the real bristle, which is going to give you some fairly sophisticated brush dynamics in terms of how these individual hairs are going to interact with each other. The downside of this technology is that we really can't change from that single pixel static line. This is going to be the very similar type of limitation that you may have already run into when you're working with certain particle brushes because they have the same rendered dab type under the hood. The idea there is that we would be dealing with a static single pixel line, and that's never really going to change. And that's a real big limitation of those two brush technologies. So we can see this by coming over here to our dab type dropdown and looking, and you can see here we have camel hair, flat, palette knife, and bristle spray. And these guys are all going to be rendered dab types that are going to enable us to work with real bristle. Below this, we can also see that we have liquid ink camel hair, flat, palette knife, and bristle spray. And down here at the very bottom, we also have dynamic speckle bristle. And all of these are also going to allow us to access the real bristle technology, but we're going to have access also to dabs, which means that we're going to have access to things that we can never get when we're dealing with the standard camel hair or flat or palette knife or bristle spray, because these guys are going to be static single pixel lines, whereas when we can add dabs into that equation, we can do all the things like spacing and randomization and opacity randomization that we can never do with these static single pixel lines. And so this is going to be what we're primarily going to be exploring over the next several videos, is how are those dabs that are being added to these static single pixel lines going to really dramatically change the results that we can get from these rendered bristle types. So I'm just going to come back over here and click on camel hair and make a mark and then do a Control A and backspace to clear that canvas. And we're going to go ahead and pick up from this point in the next video.